Onto this story now. A private security company in Cape Town is alleged to have kicked beachgoers off Clifton Beach after sunset. Now, the city says an investigation into the allegations is underway. For more on this, we're joined by the City of Cape Town's Safety and Security Mayoral Committee member, that's JP Smith. Mr. Smith, good evening to you. Thanks for your time. These complaints were given to you on Monday, if I am correct. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. How far have you gone in terms of your investigations?
So can I perhaps just start by saying we've had an excellent day on the beaches with our 500-plus law enforcement officers making sure that everybody is safe and secure. Over 300 lifeguards, and it's been a very good day with a bit of a late start due to the rain. So we're quite proud of the 10 blue flag beaches we've been able to offer the public. The incident on Clifton Beach was in fact regrettable, and the security company who took it upon themselves after the law enforcement officers left after between 8 and 10 to engage some of the beachgoers there and talk to them. We've contacted them and explained to them that that is well beyond their powers, that they are engaging in illegal actions, and we've got law enforcement tonight keeping an eye open to see that they don't try and repeat the action. And if that is the case, then we will charge them. There is also a role for the national regulator, CIRA, in national government, and the South African police, whose responsibility it is to regulate the private security companies to take action against them. And perhaps we could have gotten onto this faster if, instead of politicizing the matter, the two senior ANC politicians who allegedly were involved in the incident had reported to the city straight out instead of trying to politicize the matter.
JP, you speak about charging this private security company. What will it take for you to charge them?
Well, if we see them interfering with the beachgoers, none of our law enforcement staff were present when the previous incident allegedly happened. We have staff on scene tonight. We've been alerted to it now. And if we see them try and repeat this behavior, but I must tell you, the abuses by private security companies are rife all over South Africa. In Joburg, you've got private security companies setting up roadblocks and gating communities. In other suburbs, we've seen the private security companies asserting themselves aggressively in a policing role and shaking people down to search them on the street. So I think overall in South Africa, we have a challenge around private security companies exceeding their powers. And this, again, is a matter for the national regulator. And in the absence of them doing this, the situation, I would suggest, across South Africa is getting steadily more problematic.
JP, talk to me about the permission that would have been given to this private security company to do this, because my understanding is that they have been saying they are in part enforcing bylaws. Does the city, or is the city partly responsible for them carrying out these activities?
I mean, anybody can pretend to be anything. The ANC pretend to be good government. The private security company can pretend to have permission. They must show us where such a thing was done in writing, or they must say which official indicated to them that they may do so. We know that that is not the case. We've said it abundantly clearly, and this has now become a very sensationalized media angle feeding into a broader political narrative that is being played, which in fact we could have handled much more responsibly if, unfortunately, these two politicians who got involved right from the beginning weren't so eager to play into the political silly season. The matter was quickly dealt with immediately when we discovered that the security company had acted in this manner. We've got contact details for them. Richard Bosman, the executive director, contacted them, and we were extremely clear with them as to the extent of their powers. If they interfere with our staff tonight, if the staff see them doing this, we will stop them, and if they interfere with the staff, we have indicated to them that it is then within our rights to arrest them. They are not peace officers, and they do not have the power to effect security or to effect city bylaws. And I would again say to you that this is a broader problem than Cape Town. This is happening across the country in many ways, except that the rest of South Africa doesn't enjoy the level of scrutiny that Cape Town is subjected to, and that this is a matter where the national regulator needs to get involved, because they are slowly allowing security companies to absorb the powers and behaviors of the police.
If this was a political narrative of which I want to talk about a little later, there are similar incidents. It is reported in parts like Lansdowne, for example. So it does seem that this is somewhat of a a recurring incident that is happening around Cape Town. Talk to me about whether you've heard that there were similar reports in Lansdowne.
No, I think the difference is that here things get extensively and abundantly discussed, and there's a very hyper-vigilant level of scrutiny on every matter, and everything is immediately linked back to political narratives. I would suggest to you that the same happens with security companies across this country, and I've been in conversations with people who've confirmed to me that private security companies in Durban and Johannesburg and Bloemfontein engage in similar behavior off the cuff where they patrol communities. The difference being is that when it's driven by a senior ANC member in the provincial government, provincial chairperson of the ANC, it gets legs. But that said, similar behavior happens elsewhere. So there isn't a racial or demographic dynamic to this. We had problems or complaints from community members that the local security company in Gatesville was being excessively aggressive with people walking in the street at night and was interrogating them. This is a problem with how private security companies, some of them behave. Whilst the vast majority are respectful of people's constitutional rights and their legal powers, there are some who encourage and win clients by being particularly aggressive.
You talk about a political narrative that is being driven, J.P. Smith. Talk to me about this political motive that you say is behind these reports, or that's behind this hypervigilance, as you call it.
I think one sees a thread being woven by the ANC in this province, linking every incident or every suggestion or allegation of an incident to a constant racial narrative. And it is suggestive, I would say, of somebody who has little left to offer on the policy platform and who now has to resort to highly emotive politics, continuously trying to play the race card and everything. And it's simply not so. When a private security company makes a ham-fisted intervention into a problem that has occurred, and you must understand on that beach, last week we had an incident where a group of young men became inebriated and got involved in a violent fisticuff late at night. And so everybody has been trying to figure out how we prevent the recurrence of those kind of incidents. They're rare in Cape Town on our beaches, and so they were a shock to the system. And I think in this case, the security company tried to do something to fix it, but did the wrong thing. They have now been alerted to the fact that such behavior will not be tolerated. And at the same time, the executive director has extended the hours of our law enforcement staff at many of our beaches because we see that usage patterns have changed and we're seeing people on the beaches later at night. But the initial reporting of it was sensationalized and was dramatized into a racial narrative when in fact it had little to do with it. And that's up to Ibrahim Rasool's sister and to Faiz Jacobs, because this is the kind of narrative you will hear from them on every issue.
JP, just as a final question to you, we are out of time, but how else are people to interpret this? Because you will understand it harks back to the years of racial segregation when beaches were actually, there were certain beaches that black people were not allowed to go. How else then must people interpret this when rich homeowners can simply hire a private security company to throw people off the beach because they fear that there might be wrongdoing on the beaches?
So I don't think there's any defense for that, and I think absolutely one must get upset about that. But the appropriate response is not to wait 24 hours and then call a press conference. The appropriate response is to pick up the phone to the city's call center and say, we have a problem. We've seen the security company do this, and we would have been able to intervene right there on the spot, not wait for the issue to gain this kind of momentum. So it's also not how you build social cohesion. So absolutely the security company is wrong, and we hope to see that SAPS and the national regulator, who are the only people who have control over the private security companies, will play their role in doing the necessary regulation. Maybe if the ANC provincial leaders focused a bit more on their policing efforts, then we wouldn't have a situation where violent altercations between young people are occurring on the beaches. But you would be hard-pressed to find a SAPS member on any of the city beaches. That has been left exclusively for the city to fend with Metro Police and law enforcement, and we're doing so competently.